What's up, dude?
What's up, dude? How you been?
It's been a long time. It's been rough. It's been good. It's been all over the place. It's been a roller coaster.
Rough.
I went and did a week-long drill with my Navy Reserve unit,
Mm-hmm.
and um, we did a range week basically, and I had four sailors that I am now deeming the suicide squad, uh, because I mean, they almost got either themselves or other people killed multiple times.
Oh yeah, that's the best part about the Navy, dude.
Oh, dude, it was ridiculous. I made a post on my Instagram, and I'm actually challenging my listeners. I want to see your results, see what it looks like. But I put out the can you shoot better than a sailor, and put out the quals for rifle and pistol.
Oh, cool.
And I'm kind of curious to see if anyone tries it out and sees how they stack up. If you're listening, check out my post. I think it would be really interesting to see kind of how everyone compares. Um, because I don't think it would be hard for most people that shoot regularly to get expert. I don't think it's going to be very hard at all. I'd be surprised if he didn't, but I am kind of curious to see how people stack up. But yeah,
Oh,
I dealt with some real idiots. So
well, okay. Well, before you put me down, my little medal on my chest is still hanging proud, brother. Um,
yeah,
expert. I got a lot of platinum on my chest, brother.
we
so
had
the so did you know the new guys aren't even getting the rifle ribbon anymore?
it doesn't surprise me after
Well,
seeing some of these
Well, they're
guys.
not getting the rifle ribbon anymore because they're not doing irons anymore. They're doing red dots and ACOGs, shit like that.
Oh, interesting. See, I thought you still got like my understanding was if you shot the course of fire without irons, if you used any type of optic,
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't matter what you score, but you just get marksman.
I thought it was no ribbon at all.
I heard that you as long as you pass, it's still you just get marksman. You have to shoot unassisted
Yeah.
to get expert, which I think is kind of stupid that we don't just do blanket across the board optics anyway, and the way we're still running irons. But that's a topic for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just had the Keystone Cops of gun handlers on the firing line. So yeah. And then I've got like kind of a stuffy nose, like a summer cold thing going on. But other than that, things are going good.
Sweet, bro.
Yeah,
Um,
go
funny
ahead.
thing. So I was about to say, with the qualification and becoming in the Navy and everything like that, yes, it is very easy, very, very simple things. But you have to remember too that the Navy, the majority of people, so like unlike R rates and like SEALs and like SWIC and like certain GMs, things like that, most jobs in the military don't require you to really shoot guns, don't require you to be proficient in a lot of these things. So
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
not surprised that most people suck.
yeah, I mean, we had a guy, 2 years from retirement. This is the first time he's been in a security unit. I can't remember what his rate was, but he hasn't touched a gun since he went to boot camp 18 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's like I totally understand, but at the same time, some of these people, like you're like, the safest place is right in front of you, my guy, because
Yeah.
you can't like this same guy who hadn't shot in forever.
Mhm.
Um, he fired 10 rounds for the side-in portion of the qualification.
Yeah.
Which, for those who don't know, like your Navy rifle qual, your first, of course, it fires. You have on your own for a good portion of time. You fire a total of 10 rounds to kind of side in and zero in your rifle on a target that's at 25 yards, but it's a reduced target, so it's supposed to simulate 200 yards, right? But you kind of walk it in to hit where you want. So this guy didn't even hit the paper all 10 rounds. And
Yeah.
I'm sitting there being his line coach, and I'm like, dude, you are kind of beyond help. Like, I don't know how to help you. Like, I can't even see where you're missing bad enough to be like kind of try to help this out, bud. So we let him shoot the course of fire as kind of a familiarization course, and we knew we'd run him through a couple times. And the Navy rifle qual is 40 rounds in three different positions. a total of 5 points per round, so a top score of 200. You need 140 to pass, which means basically you need 70% to pass.
Mm.
So 200 points, this guy got a 96. Like, bro, less than half your rounds hit the paper. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. Like you should get a medal just for being this terrible.
Oh, Jesus.
Like the running joke for the longest time was that like since this guy was so close to retirement that he's probably just like Chris Kyle and he just didn't care, you know? Like it was
he was just shooting, just whatever.
yeah, I mean because like we were sitting there and we're doing the math on it. We're like statistically speaking, you should have at least like a 120. Like just based on the average number of rounds heading downrange, the size of the targets, everything. Like you should have at least a certain number of rounds on the paper here, statistically speaking. Like you've kind of just broke math.
It doesn't. It just doesn't compute.
Yeah, you're sitting there, you're like, I don't understand. Like the law of averages alone is telling me there should be more holes on this paper.
But let's move faster. Let's move faster. I'm sorry you had such a bad time. That kind of sucks, man.
Other than that,
But
things were going good. And
yeah.
that wasn't until all you guys kept sending me all the presidential order thing from Biden talking about activating the reserves and gave me a mini heart attack for a minute.
Oh yeah, dude.
Everyone's like, "Oh no, they're activating everybody." And then come to find out, it's just 3,000 people, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's way better."
You're like, calm down.
Yeah,
It's not me.
6 months left. I'm out in December. Don't do this to me.
Yeah, I bet you were straight up panicking.
Well, the first one I got sent was one from it was from some knockoff Black Rifle page or something,
Yeah.
and it was just a clip of it, so it didn't have all of it on there. So it just said that he was activating everybody, but it didn't say the numbers. And I'm like, oh crap, dude! Like this is bad. And
Yeah.
especially when they start talking about like calling up some dudes out of the IRR, and I'm like, oh, dude, if they're calling the IRR, like that's a draft without saying draft, you know? And then I finally find the full article, and it's like, no, we're activating 3,000 people. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes way more sense.
That's not so bad.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm way less concerned. I'm like, and the thing is, for most people, for those listening that aren't aware, like we've had reservists and stuff on orders over like assisting Ukrainians and other countries over there for training since that war started. And so I'm pretty sure my opinion is that from what I've been hearing, they had a NATO summit recently, and this is basically just Biden doing something on paper, but he's not really doing anything because it's just the same thing we've been doing, if that makes sense. It's official now. You know, it looks good to the politicians.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because honestly, nothing that they do makes sense, dude.
No, not at all. But speaking of making sense, you know what does make sense?
What does?
Being physically, emotionally, and mentally healthy.
This is a big topic for me. This is a big topic for a lot of people, I think. Honestly, dude.
Yeah. You know, I mean, like we all know like the classic trope from Grand Thumb, like if you're not fit, you're gonna die, right? And now I think most of us look at that as like the physical aspect, which is important, absolutely. But that also includes, you know, emotional and physical, I mean, emotional and mental fitness as well.
So if you want to take the kind of the stand on this one for a little bit, and you just like, because especially you coming from a lot of groups that you're in, a lot of things that you're in, I feel like you're a really good person to talk about the subject of just being like mentally ready.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I would say like when it comes to mentality, I would say that for those like that trying to do like this whole Minuteman thing, generally what I wind up seeing, especially in people who decide to form groups to train, I generally come across three types of mentalities. And generally I come across the one where it's people treat it less like a training and more of like I want to get away from the wife and kids, and this is boys' night with guns, right? Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with blowing some steam off with the homies. Totally get it. Down to sling some legs for funsies.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those things where it really sucks when you're the only one taking something seriously and you're trying to like benefit and learn and get something out of it, and everybody else is fucking off. It kind of makes it lose its value.
Oh,
Um,
dude, 100%.
the other side is like the wannabe warlord, right? Like the guy that was bullied in high school, but he didn't become a cop, so instead he became, a leader of some kind of training group. It's his way or the highway. This is how he gets his rocks off for his little power trip. And
Mm-hmm.
he's really toxic to be around, but he's got like a chain of leadership that is just also toxic to be around. And
It's like vet bros without being in the military.
yeah, or like some dude who like was a desk jockey forever, but he'll tell you he was a Marine, so he knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Or he was a Marine. Or he was a Marine.
yeah,
And just has no experience. Just has no idea what he's doing.
yeah, exactly. Or or the experience is very outdated.
Oh,
A lot of times they'll see this with like older dudes, like 50 plus, who are somehow running a group or something, and it, they act like back in Nam or back in whenever, and you're like that. The math ain't mathing, my guy.
I always feel so bad for those younger guys that come into the gun shop and stuff. They're like, "Well, my grandpa told me this, or my grandpa told me that. 1911 is the best gun ever made." And you just have to break their little hearts.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And then I would say like when it comes to mentality too. So then finally the third group, and unfortunately it tends to be the smallest group, are the people that actually want to mentally be there and prepare themselves for a harsh reality down the future, for an SHTF, for a Minuteman style lifestyle, whatever you want to call it. And I think the big thing there is they are taking it seriously because they are looking at it and saying, like, I'm spending my own time, my own money. There's better things I could be doing on a Saturday. I could be taking my kids to the park. I could be, hanging out, sleeping in, doing whatever. Instead, I'm spending hard earned money and my hard earned time to go off into the mountains for a few hours and go do some stuff with these guys to try to prepare myself and build a sense of community and to build a sense of readiness.
mm-hmm.
I think part of that too, mentality, again, coming back to the mentality part, is you've got to be able to look at things realistically.
Yeah.
You've got to establish, like, kind of like a small business, you got to establish like what your goals are, right? If you are thinking that in your head you're going to, be Luke Skywalker and lead the resistance against the Empire, but it's you and two dudes, probably need to stop thinking about major, massive movements of people and try to focus on, like, what's realistic for you and your three guys, right?
Right.
How to things, same things go with what you train, how you train. Also the mental ability to like accept new ideas, to understand you don't know everything. That's the biggest thing. Like I tell people all the time, and I'm like, look, man, I am a master of nothing. I'm an eternal student. I'm constantly trying to learn things. I'll teach you what I know, but if someone knows something better than me, or they have more knowledge on that, I'm totally open to letting them take the floor. Um, Also having the mental readiness to, like, we talk about being a Minuteman.
Yeah.
That means literally being able to mentally like switch on and off that kind of, inner fight or flight, and being able to respond to that and putting yourself in stressful situations. They don't have to be combat related, but just putting yourself in stressful situations to get yourself used to being able to operate under stress and making yourself uncomfortable. Because you can have like super awesome fitness, right? You could be a rock star physically. But if you don't work well under pressure, you're going to crack whenever things start going off, right?
Yeah, absolutely, dude.
I'm sure you've seen it too. I've seen it before where you get guys who go through training scenarios, or go out in real world scenarios even, and they're super fit. They're squared away guys. Like on paper, they look like rock stars, right?
Yeah.
And you throw a couple things in the book that are off script, and they're like, hold on a second. Whoa, wait, what? What do I do? And then you got other people like here. Let me back up. Let me give a prime example. So my reserve unit is doing a training scenario, basic security training scenario. We have set up a fake entry control point, so like a fake gate on a fake base, right? And we've got blue guns, so we've got our little training aids or whatever, right? We got some people as actors, and for this scenario, a guy comes up, throws a backpack towards our gate, it explodes, and kills off some of our people, right? Keep
Yeah.
in mind, all of this is scenarios, all of this is pretend, okay? The guy who is in charge of that command post panicked and was like, there's a medical emergency, a security emergency, and an active threat all at the same time. I don't know what to do.
I'm
Okay.
lost. Yeah.
His assistant in command also like, man, I'm trying to figure out when do I take over? Right. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'd had more experience in this area than these guys had. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's like I got to come up there and be like, hey, you know, you do this, you do this, you do this, right? Like you call security, get more guys down here. You
Yeah.
call medical, start rendering aid. You do this, right? But it's because having been through some other scenarios and through other training and having more experience of being able to mentally operate under stress and training to a point to where you just know what to do as a secondhand thing, it helps prepare you mentally. Um,
Or at
people
least
talk.
have an idea of what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like people talk about like always having an exit strategy. Like for someone who doesn't have any experience about this, right, at all, next time you go out to eat, right, like there's a reason a lot of us will pick strategic places in a restaurant to eat. Like I like having my back to a wall to where I can see the openings, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of people do, honestly, on that
yeah,
one.
it gives you a sense of security, kind of get the lay of the land. Just run through your head a simple scenario, like, hey, if I'm eating here with my family, by myself, whatever your situation is, and
Mm-hmm.
some dude decides to come through that door and says, hey, money on the table, everybody get down on the ground, what would I do?
Yeah.
Like what would I run? Would I fight back? What's the best thing to do? If maybe I'm concealed carrying and I'm worried about my family, okay, where would I get up? Where would I go? Or even simple one, lie down in your bed at night with your family, wherever they're in bed, right? And think about, okay, if someone kicks in my door right now, what is my first course of action? You know,
Yeah.
if I'm responding with a firearm, is it within reach? Does my family know what to do while I go check this out? Right? How do I make sure that, my kids know what to do and my wife knows what to do if that's something that's happening, right?
Yeah.
And, and that's where the mental part comes in. Um, I think the other that kind of bleeds a lot into as well with the emotional health, especially going into like the side of stress. I think that when we get into the emotional health, it's making sure that sometimes this Minuteman lifestyle and things like this, we get concerned with a lot of the stuff going on in the world. We get real caught up in the news or things we need to prep for, or things that we find that are dangerous. And I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes you can get in kind of a doomer cycle.
Yeah, whereas you start ignoring the things going on in every day, and you
Yeah,
start focusing
yeah,
strictly on what's happening in front of my face. Like you need to,
exactly.
yeah, you need to take a second and realize that, like, oh man, sometimes this stuff is happening right in front of me. It's not, later on.
Like prime example, right?
Mm-hmm.
People kept sending me on Instagram all the presidential order stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in the reserves till December. So, if something were to happen, there's a potential. It's not very high, but a potential. And so it was one of those things where I was sitting there. I was like, you know what? It's payday. Everyone's sending me this crap. Instead of worrying about this, you know what? I was like, babe, get the kids. We're going out to dinner. I was like, I'm just going to enjoy the time that I have emotionally, like with my family. I'm going to tune out all the doomer stuff. It'll still be there when I reopen my phone. You know,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
I,
it definitely will be.
I don't need to stress out about all this. Like there's certain things I can't change, and emotionally, you just got to be prepared for that, right? That
Yeah.
at a certain point, no matter how well you've prepared, You have to be able to know that like there's going to be things outside of my control. I have to accept that, and I have to, mentally and emotionally prepare myself for that.
Yeah.
Um, I think a big portion of that, to get kind of deep, and dark here, uh, with the emotional, again, bleeding between that and the mental health part of it, is if you are someone who has a family or who has a wife or girlfriend, significant other, if you have someone important that you love in your life and they are with you, you need to have serious conversations at some point with that significant other on your views on this type of lifestyle, what their views are. Because it's one thing if you take it seriously, but like your girlfriend or your wife doesn't care or doesn't take this seriously, right?
Yeah.
Um, because that could cause a lot of conflict down the road, especially should a scenario happen and you haven't discussed like, oh no, what about this? What about that? Um, things like where your line in the sand is,
Hmm.
if you're married with kids and you're thinking, I'm going down guns blazing, right? Is your wife on the same page?
Yeah. Everybody better be on the same page here.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing where it's like, I look at it this way. If it ever came down to the point where enemy force, a domestic force, whatever, if it comes down to like Americans are slinging lead at each other or at somebody else on U.S. soil, you should probably have talked to your wife, or whoever you're with about what's our plan. Like, what do we do with this? What do we both see is worth fighting for? A lot of people talk about like they'll take my AR-15 from my cold dead hands. Okay, I'm not saying no. I'm right there with you. But have you had
Yeah.
that conversation with your wife? And not
It's
just like
yeah.
oh yeah, babe, I'm with you, but like no, like a deep conversation and say like, look, if federal agents or if armed people showed up at my door and said, turn in your guns, are we
What's happening? Yeah. What's gonna go down here?
like how are we on board with this, right?
Hmm.
Are we going down guns blazing, family of four, or are we turning them in and hoping for the best later down the road? Like, you need to have those deep, serious conversations and what you're willing to lose and risk. And personally, it's going to be different for everybody. But personally, I think, for me, it's one of those things where I look at it and I think there are certain things that I know if I give up, even if it means saving my family in the short term, I'm dooming them in the long term. And would have been better for us just to fight or stand our ground on certain things. It's a hard topic to take.
Yeah.
I think part of it too also has to go down to, um, if you are a person of any type of religious or belief system, to for me personally, like, so I'm a Christian, and part of the thing that helps me out with this is, for me, knowing that Christ is my savior. I'm saved. I'm going to heaven no matter what. At this point, with the way salvation works, kind of like takes a lot of the fear of death out of it when it
Yeah.
comes
So you
like
don't
that.
focus on it as much.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I still don't want to die, but it makes my eternity secure and takes a lot of the hesitation that may come out of there out of something.
Hmm.
And so it's one thing like me and my wife have talked about like, hey, exactly that scenario. If people come to that door, you know,
What's the game plan?
how are we doing this? I was because I have said like before, it's like I would like to say, I'd like to say in my head that I'm not giving them over. That it would be it from my cold dead hands, but you know, are we all on the same page here? You know, and it's one of those. Me and my wife are on the same page where if it's something where we're like, hey, we're here for your kids, like we're coming to take your kids, that it's going to be like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. I get it, dude.
yeah, they're hard questions, and for the people listening, these are. I know it sucks to have these conversations because they can get dark and they could cause conflict with your family or with your spouse, but it's one of those things that like it's way better to have at least. I mean, even if it even if you're both blowing smoke up each other's ass, right? And trying to be a strong character here. If you've at least like have an ideal game plan of where you're both like, yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Yep.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that makes it so much easier emotionally than, sitting there and being like, okay, the scenario we talked about's happening. Let's
And then
do
they're not with you, you know?
Yeah. They're like, get all the bags, we're going to the mountains. And they're like, okay, so that sounded really good in the moment, when we talked about that. Like, I'll be honest, but
So, but actually,
yeah, I kind of like it in our house,
yeah,
like
yeah, I get
those
it, dude.
that are rough, and then there's things you got to get figured out. Um, Also, I think like finding a good group of people to be able to, whether they're another group of guys, whether they're in person, whether they're on Instagram, whether they're on Facebook, whatever, like people you can legitimately open up to and talk to,
Mm-hmm.
because we all go through hard times, man. We all go through hard stuff, and I know like a lot of us listening here are dudes, and we have grown up, a lot of us, in households where men don't talk about feelings, do anything like this. That's pussy stuff. You don't get emotional. And to a certain extent, it's like, yeah, you don't want to be a crybaby about everything, but you need to open up when it comes to mental health, man. Like especially suicide stuff, depression. Um, I'm sure you and I can probably go for a good list of people that we either knew or have heard of. Um,
Yeah. I've
you
lost
know,
a lot of friends that way, dude. Lost,
exactly.
I lost a lot of friends over the years through mental health issues and things like that. And you need to know that you have to have the balls, you have to have the courage to open up and be able to tell people when you're not doing okay.
Absolutely, dude. It sucks and it's rough, and you don't feel necessarily like, I don't know. I guess you feel less manly at sometimes when you're doing it. I've been there where I've had to sit down and talk with people about stuff going on in life, and it's way better, in my opinion, for me to sit down with you, share a couple beers and a crappy night, together, than
Yeah.
it would be to carry your casket. You know, like
Yeah.
I one scenario, like we have a really crappy night, and we kind of we work our way through it, and we get help, and we kind of make it happen. The other scenario, I never get to see you again, and I have to explain to your family why I wasn't able to do enough to help you out. You know, so it's one of those things that being aware of where your mental health is and your emotional health, and honestly being open about it, and being able to seek help with like-minded people, and if need be, professional help if that's what it comes to. Because at the end of the day, if you're not emotionally fit as well as mentally and physically,
Yeah.
goes right back at it. It's a trifecta. You got to have all three boxes, right?
Yeah. You can't
Uh,
just be knocking one or whatever.
yeah, you can be mentally prepared to turn to every scenario. You can be a rock star stud when it comes to PT, but and, you can run a mile in like nothing. But if you can't get control of your emotions, it doesn't matter. You know,
Especially people always, they always claim like they're like, LPVO is the best. This, that, that. Recce this, recce that, right? Most people don't think in that situation of how am I doing mentally? Did I bring that
yeah,
candy bar? Did I bring that little bit that's gonna make me go, you know what? This sucks, but at least I'm in the suck with a little bit of something, little bit of help for myself. So the mental game is one
absolutely,
part of it.
dude. Like little morale things go such a long way, man. When
Yeah.
you can be that, like, when you're that one guy where everyone's been rucking for a long time, your feet are sore, everyone's wet, it's crappy out, you're only halfway done, and you're like, anybody want some gummy bears? Like that little thing right there just sparks the joy in everyone, you know?
Oh, dude, or just a little bit of attitude. I remember my favorite sailors weren't necessarily like my best work output guys. It were the guys that could make me smile.
Absolutely.
Like just make me forget where I'm at for a second. Make me forget I'm on deployment for a second, and I'm just like here with you, dude. I'm like, what's up, man? We're gonna make it.
Absolutely. And those are usually where those good friendships come out of, which is another part of this, man, is like, don't be a loner. Don't be out on your own like, man, I got it. I'm so stoic and by myself, blah blah blah. Like we weren't built to be alone, man. Um, find yourself a good group of dudes and and get close, like become friends, get your
Yeah.
family together for barbecues, like hang out and don't be this guy who's like, I gotta be the stoic lone wolf. Okay, it's not an anime. You're not the main character, okay? You're all right. You're not gonna just like sit there, push your glasses up and be like, oh, he doesn't know.
He
Like,
doesn't know.
right. Like you're not like some secret ninjutsu master. That's not how this works.
He doesn't know.
But yeah, it's one of those things where again, it's a vastly overlooked part of it. We could talk about how many push-ups that you should be able to do, or anything like that, but it's hard to quantify, emotional health. It's hard to quantify mental readiness. Um, I think a big part of it, though, like especially in this community, I know it from a lot of people who are prior military, especially those who had families when we were military. Uh, we're kind of used to the idea of like talking to the spouses and like, hey, if this happens, this is our plan, because you kind of have to. That's kind of part of the deal. But for those who may not have that experience, I would challenge you honestly, especially if this is something you do take seriously. If you are personally mentally ready and have a line drawn in the sand that says, if this line is crossed, I will react, whether that be civil war, Russians falling from the sky, whatever your scenario is,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure that that line is across the board with the family. And if it's not, then you need to either readjust where that line is or be prepared to walk away from all of that.
Yeah, 100%. And you can't force someone into it either. It's not
Yeah,
like one of those moments where you can just be like, oh well, if you don't support the way I think, you don't think the way I think, it's okay. I'll do it for the both of us.
right. Which going into that a little bit too, for those of you out there who are single and are looking for people, or maybe you're in the early stages of a relationship, this is something I wouldn't necessarily jump right in day one with this, but I would say that like this is kind of something if you're looking for someone long term to discuss with, because that's a decision that you're going to be stuck with, right?
It's a big deal.
And you got to make sure you're all on the same page.
Yeah, it's a big deal, dude.
Absolutely, because you are committing to a certain lifestyle. You are saying, like even down to simple things. You're saying like, look, a portion of our money every paycheck is going to go to this. We're gonna, live a lifestyle that's not as cool or as glamorous as some of our friends, because instead of blowing money on trips to wherever, we bought water filters and MREs.
I knew actually a bunch of dudes and stuff that they won't even go to Europe because they can't carry a gun. They
Yeah,
can't carry a gun, so they're like, "Fuck that, I'm not going."
yeah.
So I know their wives, their girlfriends, things like that. They all wanted to go to certain places, but they refuse to go. They say, "If I can't defend myself, I don't want to be there."
And it's one thing too to make sure, like I said, like you need to make sure you have shared values with whoever you wind up getting with, because it's one thing to like for some people that's going to be a make it or break it. For some people, they're going to be like, "You're crazy and paranoid. I can't believe I married you. I want to go do these things. You never want to go do these things," and that could cause a lot of contention. So you want to make sure you guys are on the same page. You've got similar values. You've got similar ideas of how the world works and how you're going to respond in certain things,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
to be prepared to be able to explain those in a calm, rational way, and understand that it might take some time for someone to come over.
Or
And
they might not get it. They might
yeah,
not ever get it. But as long as
exactly.
they're on the same page as you.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is having those talks with your spouses, in that mental readiness in your head of like, again, okay, if this is where we're at, and having the emotional maturity to be like, okay, I know where I am at on a scale of 1 to 10, for commitment to this. I'm at a 9, and my partner's at a 5. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I need to either one try to like not push, but continue in this lifestyle, and hopefully that their side kind of bumps up, or I need to develop a plan that somewhere meets in the middle. Like maybe their point of line in the sand is different than yours, and maybe there's some compromise that could be made. Maybe there's not, but it's one of those things to where I guarantee you, if it's an SHTF type scenario, and your line of the sand and their line of the sand is different, especially let's just use a simple scenario. Let's say when when you mentally say in your head, okay, it's time to bug out, grab the bags, we're leaving. If they're not on the same page as you with that, that is going to be a major issue for you, because that is going to be a major point of contention from their point forward.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a liability. So it's
it is. It's gonna be that Red Dawn moment where where they kept on going like, oh, like we're gonna bug out to the woods and this and that and that, and then you're just not, they're not ready to go. They don't want to go, whatever it may be.
And for any of you who have been married or in long-term relationships that think you're just going to be like, nope, screw it, I'm just going to grab the bags, throw everybody in the car, and we're leaving regardless. When's the last time you tried that with your wife?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, when's the last time you and your wife disagreed on something and you were like, doesn't matter, we do it anyway, and it went well for you? Now add the stress of the world falling apart around you, right? And your kids involved in all of this, and everyone's freaking out, Like, add all of that stress into there, then tell me that you're going to be mentally and emotionally ready to handle all of that and still defend your family.
Yeah, and still be ready to go at a moment's
right.
notice. I mean, shit, deployments, workups, and everything like that, they give the family ample amount of time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so for I know for my reserve deployment, we did 3 months of spin ups before we left the country, and several times for the families to come down and come see us before we left the country, which was really nice and kind of helped. It would be like a couple months. It would be like a once every month they would come down.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of helped because it kind of got them used to not seeing you for a little while.
Yeah.
Because they weren't going to see you for the next, 10 months. So a month at a time kind of built up that resiliency a little bit, which that's another word there too, with going back to the mental thing, the mental and emotional resilience. You need to try to put yourself into situations where they can be stressful but accomplishable, and try to push yourself mentally to be able to adapt to those scenarios. Because if you can't handle stress, if you can't handle, like, everyone has a certain stress point to where they just collapse, but I'm saying, like, if you can't handle certain amounts of stress, if you can't handle certain amounts of interference or certain amounts of things going on, and be able to figure out like how to tune one thing out and focus on another, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah.
A
great time for you.
I know from my personal experience in the just simple training scenario here, right? We had a simulator where it basically looks like a small patrol boat. It's got guns all around it, and you're in a garage with giant projector screens on every wall.
Yeah.
And someone is controlling everything that you see. And so they'll have boats come in and out, and they'll have people come in and out, and different things, different scenarios, to where you got to kind of keep track of what's going on. Like the real world, there's going to be stuff happening in every angle, and you have to be aware of, like, okay, what's a threat, what's not a threat. And it never fails that once they kind of start figuring out that you're getting pretty good, they literally throw everything at you. And it is set up to make you fail. You will not pass. That is the goal, is to fail you.
Yeah.
But it is to show you that, like, this is literally the worst possible scenario, right? So, for example, we're out there on this little mini ship. We're supposed to call out what we see, figure out if it's a threat or not, and then if it is a threat, what do we do, right? So they might start off, and there'll be 1 or 2 ships on your right, 1 on your left. The ones on your right, they're acting normal. The one on your left starts acting sketchy. It starts coming inbound. You do what you got to do to handle it. Problem solved. Then later they'll switch it up. Then it'll be 1 from the front, 1 from the back. And again, once you kind of get better at it, they start adding more. Now there's 4 or 5 ships. Now they add more. Now there's about 10. And ooh, now they added an aircraft, and
Yeah.
then you've been doing it for about, an hour or two, and they're like, okay, guy's got it. He's getting the concept down. He's pretty good at being able to prioritize. Let's make everything a threat. Then the next thing you know, you've got 20 vessels coming at you from every angle and the simulator thing, and you got to try to handle all of it, and you're not going to be able to. That's the whole point, is you're going to fail. But they want to see that, one, you stuck with it the whole way and never gave up. Two, you put everything that you knew to practice and try to prioritize all the way down to the last minute. And three, like, how did you handle yourself? Did you just completely collapse?
Did you shut down? Yeah.
Right. Did you shut down and go into the black? And what I mean by that is, for the people who don't know, when we talk about like mental readiness, I know at least the Navy uses this of like a color coded scheme of where you're mentally at. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't quite remember it, but I think living in the white is basically like your brain dead. Like, you pay attention to nothing all the time,
Yeah.
which I would say a certain point, like, a lot of people are in the white. Like, when you watch these videos of like people who are just walking along looking at their phone and nothing, they don't notice any of the crazy stuff happening around them.
Yeah, like
That
they're just looking down at their phone and all of a sudden like the train like almost hits them or whatever it is.
exactly. That would be walking around the white. Walking around in the yellow is what I would say most of us who carry a firearm traditionally do, is we're kind of constantly aware of our scenario. We don't have to be like super hyper focused. We're pretty aware, right?
Yeah,
Orange,
we were looking at the door at least.
yeah, orange is like a little bit more focused. Like, okay, like maybe like the way you would feel if you're carrying a firearm and you're with your wife and you're walking down a part of town that is maybe a little sketchy at night. You're kind of a little more hyper aware. That thing that was shadowy moving, you're more paid attention to that. Red is like something has happened or is happening, and you are hyper focused on this because you are actively engaged in something. Like, now you're in a fight, right? So you're kind of like laser focused on the task at hand, and you're kind of tuning out what's not important and focusing on that threat, right? Which can potentially be dangerous because there can be threats around you that you're not seeing, but that's kind of what's going on mentally.
That's
And
the one
going,
that like a lot of people say watch out at, because you are at a heightened state of it, yes, but
yes,
at the same time you're ignoring everything going on around you.
right, because you might see like, okay, the guy in front of me is pulling out a knife, walking towards me. I'm hyper focused on him, but
But
you're
then the
not
guy
paying
behind
attention
you,
to, yeah, the two guys behind you, right? So then going into the black is, you just completely have a mental shutdown. You panic. You realize like your body's overloaded with stress, and you don't know what to do, and you kind of just like black out. Like, you're there, but you don't really know what you're doing. You'd see this a lot, like in movies, as a good example, where um, oh, what is it? Band of Brothers. There's a like when there's, I can't remember what his name is, but they come across them and he's just staring up at the sky at
yeah,
one point, right? It was like in episode 2, and he's just staring up at the sky, and he's just kind of blacked out, just staring up at the sky for like hours. He went into the black. His brain had a total shutdown, didn't know how to deal with that kind of level of stress, and just shut it down. That's a defense mechanism for it.
yeah,
Or in the movies when they're like, "Hey, Jenkins, get up, come on, Jenkins, focus," because the guy's just like all shocked and like, "What the hell's going on? What do I do? What do I do?"
explosion.
That's what's
Yeah,
happening.
another example of going to the black is another war movie, amazing war movie, Saving Private Ryan, when that guy is looking around on the ground for his arm.
Yes,
Yeah.
great example. Yeah, no, that's another one. Where your stress and adrenaline and everything's going so high that you're just like, just have no idea what's going on, and you're just there.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, he's like, oh, my arm's gone. I gotta find it. He's not thinking like,
right,
oh yeah, my arm is gone.
right, and like I think if I remember right, he's like trying to like plug it back in or something.
No,
You
no, he's
know,
like trying to find it and pick it up off the ground and like run away with it, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like that. That's where that is, and the best way to avoid that again is kind of that mental conditioning. Part of that again plays back into that physical part, where a good way to be able to mentally condition yourself is by physically conditioning yourself. and doing things like, like when you're at the gym, something simple like, man, I just did 10 reps and you know what? I don't know. Can I get one more? It's going to be rough and I'm going to do it. And you just pump it out and you go like that whole thing of like your mind will stop you before your body will,
Yeah.
like you're doing push-ups and you're like, okay, I got the 50 and they're like, come on, 10 more. And you're like, dude, I can't do 10 more. Like you physically can, but your mind is telling you, no, we're good at 50, right?
Yeah.
But taking that step to be like, you know what, you're right, and just keep going, right? Um, or those videos, like you'll watch like the high school football movies where they'll they'll like put the guy on his back and do a bear crawl, and he'll be like, "Come on, man, 10 yards. I'm only asking you to go to 10 yards. Come on, 10 yards. You're almost there. You're almost there. Come on,
Mhm.
10 yards." And they just keep screaming it. The next thing you know, the kids walked 100 yards. You
Dude,
know
David Goggins, who's going to carry the boats?
exactly right. Exactly. So it's that kind of thing where you're like, you can do it in a simple way in your life. You don't have to be sitting here and be like, okay, how do I tactically set up this L-shaped ambush? And I have to be prepared for if a Russian kicks my door in at 2 a.m. Like, you don't have to start there, right?
Yeah.
You can start with just simple things like, okay, mentally pushing myself to add that little bit of extra stress. Like, okay, I run a mile and a half every day. You know what? I'm going to sprint and add an extra half mile to it just to really do it. um, I go out and do X amount of lifts of whatever exercise I'm doing that day. I'm gonna do two more than like past failure. I'm gonna go to my failure point and be like, oh, I'm gonna do more or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and pushing yourself, and then you start to build that mental confidence to know that like, you know what, I can do that. I did more than what I thought I was capable of, and you will be amazed at how much that transfers over
To
into
every day.
reading. Yeah, absolutely, and being able to react under stress. Because the big thing too is if you have that capability, when we talk about building community, if we talk about like any SHTF situation happens, civilization comes back and bounces back fairly quickly.
Yeah.
When that community is in its like regathering stage, it's going to be looking to people for leadership. Okay. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to step forward as the leader. But what I'm saying is if you're the person that can be able to react under stress and figure out what needs to happen while everyone else is shitting their pants, and you can go, hey, I need you over here, man. Hey, I need you over here. People are going to look to you for leadership, and you can step in and help out and be a better asset to your community than that way
Hmm.
than people who are completely.
Yeah, they're in the black. All they care about is what's going on in their world right now.
Exactly. Yeah, no thing. I think some of the guys that are listening here that are law enforcement, military, like you guys, deal with that fairly often. And for those who maybe are thinking like, man, I don't know where I'm at with that. Um, again, just kind of run through scenarios.
High stress
In your
training.
head.
Start yelling. Yeah, like a big thing that we used to do even in the military, dude, is like what would we do? We'd play like super loud, distracting music, and then have them try to like run a scenario, like run a drill, run a shooting
Yeah,
drill.
yeah, exactly. Something like that. Just that little bit of like, okay, prime example. Prime example. You and I both experienced this. We had Mike and I had some people we worked with who had always done individual shooting drills, like bill drills, 1R1s, box drills, things like this, right?
Mhm.
But they had never done anything as a team. So we took them out to the range. We showed them how to do a bounding overwatch, buddy rush, whatever you want to call it. Basically, where one person shoots, the other person moves up to cover, then they
Mhm.
shoot, and the other person. So it's like tactical leapfrog, right? We get them out there to go do this, and we tell them like, "Hey, you guys are going to be shooting. You need to yell at each other. So like one guy will yell, moving. The other guy will respond with move, and that's the asking for the permission and the giving of permission. And we get out there, and these guys are like, moving, move. Like I can't hear them, and I'm standing right next to them. And these guys had never done anything where they had to yell and scream and talk to another person. So that added a level of stress that they weren't comfortable with because they'd never done it before.
Yeah.
And you can tell that like the communication just broke down entirely, and so did the whole kind of drill until we had to get these guys comfortable to like, hey, I need you to scream at him, like top of your lungs, like while you're shooting, look over at him, hey, move, and be loud, and use that man voice, right?
Yeah.
And something as simple as like you said, yelling, like just adding yelling into those shooting drills and
Yep.
shooting with just another person and adding that on there because it adds an extra layer of things to be aware of and just slowly building that up because you can go out and do some like these guys were doing really good on their single person drills. They were really good. They had a good skill set, but you put them in one very simple like infantry tactic 101 type of course and communication broke down entirely and so did the whole drill just because people weren't comfortable with yelling.
Yeah, they didn't want to do it. They honestly didn't want to.
Yeah, and it was just like again that mental conditioning and that emotional conditioning of not having been in an environment where that is something that you have to deal with.
Plus,
That
people don't like. I don't know what it is, but people really don't like showing that loud voice, that authority, that backbone, that figure, because they've also been told in modern day, like raising your voice like that at someone or something like that is very rude.
yeah,
You have to get
absolutely.
past that.
Well, and it's so weird to me coming from the military to that to like shooting with other people where you go to do stuff like that and there's no verbal communication or it's quiet, no one's yelling, and I'm like, how do you do this? Like, how do you do this quietly?
Yeah, because it's considered rude. People are like, "Oh, why are you yelling?" Like, it's considered
Yeah,
rude. Um, but you just have to move past it. You got to get past it. You got to realize that, hey, man, like this is necessary. This is a necessary evil, and it has to go down. Like I have to know how to do this. My team, my people I train with, need to know what it's like to get yelled at. And I'm not saying like walk up to your teammate and be like, "Why are you being a fucking idiot? You fucking boy." Like don't be like that. But sometimes you have to assert yourself in a situation and let them know what's going down in what situation. And in fact, it won't just benefit you in your shooting life, your prepping life, your getting ready for the scenario life. It'll help you in your job searching. It'll help you as a leader. It'll help you in a lot of situations because cutting through a lot of the bullshit, being able to speak clearly, firmly, and exactly what's going on, A, B, and C, are what people look for in supervisors, in leaders, in a
it
lot
will
of
set you
yeah.
worlds apart.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And again, going back to real quick from that too, thinking about again coming back to the mental and emotional thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh as you were talking, I was just reminded of a video I'd watched from PNW Gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
And he made a really good point one time where he talked about this. So another thing I think that most of us need to talk about too, and honestly going back to get a little deep here, you need to figure out how convicted you actually are on the things that you believe in. And if and what I mean by that is the things that you mentally tell yourself that you're ready to die for, you need to do an honest gut check and actually ask yourself,
If push
these
came
are
to
things if push comes to shove, will you actually die for this?
shove. Yeah.
And if so, absolutely, 100%. And if not, that's okay too. But you need to understand where you're at mentally with that and not lie to yourself.
And you can't it's almost like leading on a girl, guys. It's like lead them on, like if you got a team, you're training, you're doing your shit, you're doing your thing, and they're like, hey, push came to shove, it's go time, buddy. And you go, well, actually, I'm not cool with that. I'm not cool with doing what we're doing here. I mean, they spent all this time training with you. They spent all this time preparing with you. They spent all this time mentally getting ready for you to be a part of this team. And you throwing your wrench in there is honestly destroying the entire team aspect of it.
I'm terrible at remembering names from movies, but
Mm-hmm.
we all know who I'm talking about. Oh, Upham. That's who it is. All right. Don't be an Upham from Saving Private Ryan. All right.
Just letting him just murder the shit out of you.
Yeah, where your buddy is in there, you know, getting stabbed in the heart by a German, and you aren't mentally and emotionally ready yet because you didn't take that time to actually prepare yourself because you were just screwing around with the boys at the range. and now your buddy's dying, and you get to live with the fact that you did nothing about it for the rest of your life. And it's easy to sit around and talk a big game, and we all do. But it's hard to sit there and ask yourself sometimes and get to those deeper questions where you're like, will I actually die for this? Are these people I would actually give my life for?
And you might be, you know what? And it's okay if sometimes you say no.
Absolutely. Everyone has their different, like, where my line in the sand is of like, this is it. I will die for this. Right. And where your line of the sand is are entirely different,
Yeah.
in theory, because it's like we all have different things that we hold of value. For some people, it's faith. Some people, it's politics. Some people, it's family. Some people, it's constitutional rights. Some people, it's all of the above. It's like everyone has a different level of, like, sometimes it might literally be someone showing up at your house. Other times it might be, politicians said this, or this law got enacted, or whatever happened, or
Mm-hmm. The
for
gun
some
one's a
of
big
us,
one. The gun one's a really, really big one that I keep on
yeah,
falling. A gun one is what I'm willing to die
yeah,
in the sand.
100%. It's one of those things where it might be one of those things where it's like, okay, at what point do we say this is it? Consequences be damned. I got to live with them. And you need to ask yourself where you're at with that, and then have those conversations with your spouse, with your family, depending on the age of your children. If I would say if they're old enough to or older to understand those concepts. I'm not saying, don't freak your 3-year-old out, but if you've got
Don't
teenage, if
freak
you
your
got,
3-year-old out.
yeah, I'd be like, hey, listen up here, Timmy. I know you're just getting out of diapers, but we're going out guns blazing Waco style. But
This is how it's going down, dog. I'm not giving you an
right,
option.
be like, we don't have a dog, so you're probably up. So,
Sorry, buddy.
don't necessarily be like that, but if you've got like a 13, 14-year-old kid, that might be kind of the age to kind of consider some of those talks, just to, at least, like, in a form that's not going to scare the hell out of them.
Yeah, because I remember being a kid, dude, and it scared the hell out of me figuring out that the sun was going to blow up in a billion years. Now try to tell your 10-year-old or 11-year-old, like, hey, by the way, if feds come in here, we're going out shooting.
Dude, I read the book 1 Second After, which is about the United States being EMP'd.
Yeah.
When I was 15 or 16, and in that book, the main character has a daughter who's diabetic.
Yeah.
And she dies in the book because she can't get her insulin.
Yeah.
And I've had a lifelong fear of diabetes since.
You're like, dude. I'm straight in my ways.
I'm not like the most in shape guy. I'm not out of shape, but I'm not I'm not super fit. I'd say I'm comfortably dad bod.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it is like my life mission to ensure that I do not get diabetes, because I'll be damned if I have to become an insulin warrior. So that is like my number one goal from that. My mental scars from reading that book. But yeah, it comes back down, I think, to kind of summarize it up, is we all know if you're not fit, you're gonna die. But that also means mentally and emotionally, and you really have to kind of self-analyze and get kind of hard on yourself sometimes and realize where you're actually at.
Yeah.
With that,
it's kind of scary, yeah, but you got to do it. Be a big boy.
absolutely, that's what part of being a man is about. Sometimes is taking those things and taking care of yourself and not being afraid to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
But with that being said, on lighter news, again, shout out to our listeners in Germany this week. I'm not sure. I don't remember if I told you. I had one of our listeners from Germany reach out, and I feel really bad right now because I don't remember his Instagram handle. But he let me know that he is a big fan of the show. We have 2% of our listeners come from Germany, and he's responsible for that. So he was saying that he let all of his friends know about the podcast. He's got about 6 or 7 guys that listen to it over there.
Really?
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. So we've got at least a small handful of dudes over in Germany that listen to this on a fairly regular basis.
That's pretty
Again,
sick.
I don't know how you found my podcast, but I greatly appreciate it. I guess our podcast. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, buddy.
In Soviet Russia, it's my podcast. But yeah, no, I think it's awesome. I appreciate you reaching out to us. Again, I'm always humbled when you guys reach out to us and talk to us, especially you guys from other countries. Every time we add another country to the listener list on the analytics of what I can see, it kind of blows me away. Where I'm like, man, that's super cool, but also like, what were you looking up that led you here? You know. So I appreciate all you guys. Also, Tap Rack Tyler and I are doing a collab of kind of like a Minuteman 101 type of deal on his YouTube channel. We've done the intro video so far. We're working on getting some more content put out for that, so that'll be in the future. But yeah, we got some other projects coming down the line, and podcast keeps growing. I appreciate it, all you guys. You guys, it's really this starting as kind of a pet project and a cool way for us to blow off steam has turned into something beautiful, and it's awesome to see.
Dude, and hopefully one day we can do this for a living. Hopefully one day this will be our thing.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you enjoy what we do, I did discover there is a way to, if you feel so inclined, I'm not going to beg you, but you can support us on Spotify. If you go to our podcast, there is a way to, I think you have to go to more options or something like that on this. And you can, oh no, sorry, there's a link on there we have on our Spotify where you can actually donate to us. And I would love to get to a point, hopefully, where this would be to the point to where we could do this every day,
Yeah, 100%, dude. You know what? We should figure out Patreon and all that stuff too.
Yeah, that was something that actually the guy from Germany brought up. He was talking about if we had a Patreon, he'd donate. So that something we'll look into and see if we can't get something figured out.
Yeah, we're still looking for a tech guy.
Yeah. Logistically, it's kind of hard to do with us being in different places, but we are still looking for someone potentially that could do some type of production stuff. We're just not quite sure logistically how we'd figure that out, but we're working on it. So
yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, It's been good talking to you.
Yeah. It's always good talking to you, brother. Hope the kids are well. Hope the wife's well. Everything. I'm going through my little baby thing anyway, so if I seem a little out of it, it's not because I hate you. It's because I'm just dealing with a pregnant lady.
I totally understand. I've been there, done it twice. Yeah, you just wait till you get the weird cravings. So.
Oh, dude, I sat here. No, I don't know if we're gonna edit this out or not, but I sat here. I watched this woman eat an entire jar of pickles.
I'm 100% leaving that in.
It was insane to me.
The way I found out, one of the ways that was kind of the tell that my wife was pregnant, which actually it wasn't a complete tell at the time because I was kind of like stupid. Yeah. But about 2 a.m, she leans over to me and she goes, "Do you want buffalo wings?" And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm in bed with this woman. She leans over at 2 a.m. and asks me if I want buffalo wings. Bro, my life is perfect right now.
This is awesome.
I was like, absolutely, I want buffalo wings.
Unsuspected to you.
Yeah. So then, the next day, she took a test, and I was like, that explains the buffalo wings.
You bitch, you tricked me.
All right, man. Well, hey, I'll catch up with you next time.
Yeah, brother. Catch you around.
Thanks for listening to Mid-Tier Thoughts.